Hello, 11A. How are you today? Or this afternoon, or this morning? I don't know when you're going to be watching this. Okay, so I need everyone to get their student manual 008, and we're on to Unit 4. So GAC 008, Unit 4. As usually, please pause the video if you need to go and get something, and also pause the video if you need more time to complete a particular section of the book, because we're going to be doing some book work together. So be patient. I'm sure that this will be a very exciting experience for everybody. Okay. So human health, what we're going to be doing in this section is actually preparing you for assessment event number 2. So in-class test, which will be a description, and you're going to be doing 2 different things in this. So number 1, you are going to be writing about a process. So you'll be given a process, and I'll show you in a moment what that's going to look like. And also you'll be describing a graph. All right, so we're going to be looking at our skills and abilities in what sort of phrases we need to use to complete a graph, and also to talk about a graph and talk about a process. Now, assessment event 2, it's a big one. It's 20% of your overall mark. So I will be doing a mock description with you probably next week, and the actual assessment is going to be in 2 weeks' time. So we'll work together and make sure that we've got the correct language, correct sentences, correct order, appropriate planning, etc. Okay, so writing, description of a graph. So we're going to look at how we interpret information from graphs and the language that we need to actually describe them. So you're going to be tested on this in AE2. Next week, I'm actually going to give you some vocabulary for you to learn, just to make the assessment a little bit easier for you, because it is about how you describe, not about a vocabulary test. So look at the following graph. How would you describe the number of annual births in Canada between 1921 and 2006? Okay, so have a look at this. Have a think. What could you say about it? So, for instance, the first thing that I would see is that it went up quite a lot here. I might also call that the peak. Okay, so it actually peaked to about 450,000 annual births in Canada in around 1960, 1961. What I'd like you to do is please get a pen and paper out. And I'm going to ask some questions, and I want you to write down the answers to those questions, and then we're going to have a look at the description and how those questions can then turn into a description. So pen and paper, please, and just answer these couple of questions. So number 1, what overall information does the graph show? What overall information does the graph show? What is the time period covered by the graph? What is the time period covered by the graph? How would you describe the rate of annual births in Canada between 1921 and 1935? So how would you actually describe the rate of births in Canada between 21 and 35? So have a look between 21 and 35. What does it look like here? How would you describe that? How would you describe the rate of annual births in Canada between 1941 and 1961? So looking at number 41 through to 61, how would you describe that? So if you can just write down in a sentence how you would describe that. Okay. And how would you describe the rate of annual births in Canada between 1971 and 1986? So 71 through to 1986, and just this section here. How would you describe that? And finally, in which year did the number of annual births peak? So which year did the number of annual births peak? Okay, so this is an example of from what you've actually, those questions that I've asked you, you can then turn that into a description. So it's a nice way. These are kind of questions that you need to ask yourself when you're looking at the graph. Once you've asked those questions, it'll give you the information that you can put then into a description. So we're going to go through this description. I would love if we can read this out loud together. So I'll read nice and slowly out loud together to get you to continue to practice your speaking. The graph shows the number of annual births in Canada from 1921 to 2006. At the start of the period, the birth rate hovered around 250,000. In 1938, just before the start of the Second World War, a sustained increase in births began, resulting in the so-called baby boom. The number of births peaked in 1959 when 480,000 babies were born, almost double the 1921 rate. After remaining at exceptionally high levels, the annual number of births began falling sharply in 1964, not levelling off until the mid-1970s. In 1988, there was again an increase in births, peaking at 405,000 in 1990. After that, the number of births began to decline rapidly, going as low as 330,000 in 2000. Since then, the number of births has been on an upward trend, reaching 360,000 in 2006. Okay. So if you want an example of how to get a good mark for your description, this is a really good example. So they've used the information as well as some context. So you can see that before the Second World War, the birth rate was lower, but then we can see that there was a baby boom. So after the Second World War, all the soldiers came back and were happy, and then we had lots and lots of babies. Okay. Right, so we've got some useful language in describing. So these are going to be really important for you to consider, to remember, memorize, and use when you're actually doing your graph. So direction, if so it's going up, we can have a look to go up, to rise, to increase, to boom, to peak, or to reach a peak. A noun would be a rise, an increase, a boom, gains, or upward trend. Okay, so you can use it as a verb or a noun. Got the arrow going down, to go down, to fall, to decrease, to drop or to decline, a fall, a decrease, a drop, a decline, downward trend. And I do encourage you to try and memorize these in preparation for the assessment. And it's just going to improve your general vocabulary as well. So if we look, this is not really moving, so it's just staying at the same level. So it would be to level off, to remain steady, to hover around, or to stabilize. If anyone has seen Back to the Future, you'll know what a hovercraft is, and it's something that just kind of sits and stays around the same area. It doesn't stay completely still. This would be hovering and then leveling off. Then to reach a peak, to peak, a peak. Then we've got up and down, a little bit of a snake happening, is to fluctuate or to vary. A fluctuation or a variation. Okay. So these verbs and nouns can be used with adjectives and adverbs to describe how much change took place. So here are some examples. So I'm going to get you to read through those yourself. So we're going to reread model description of a graph on the previous page, and I want you to highlight which expressions you actually saw. Okay, so please go back up to here and just highlight the expressions that you saw. Okay, as usual, please pause if you've not completed that yet, and press play once everybody is at the same stage. Okay, so let's carry on. We're going to look at labeling a graph. So put the letter on the corresponding place in the graph. So the first one's been done for you. Okay, so I want you to put the corresponding letter on this graph. Okay, so a dramatic rise, a slight fall, a steady increase, a sharp decrease, a peak, or a leveling off. Okay. Again, please press pause if you've not completed. I want you to do the work and then for us to do the answers. So in the same way as we would if I was in the classroom, this is the best way that I can work out now. Who knows what will happen in a month, but hopefully this is functioning all right. So the first one we know is a dramatic rise. Then here I would say would be D, a sharp decrease. So it goes down really quickly there, so D. I'd have a go up here, might be a leveling off. So around here, it's kind of leveling off a little bit. It seems almost hovering around the same rate. And then slowly we're just progressing up here. So it might be a steady increase. So this isn't really sharp the way that A is, it's just a steady increase. E would be a peak. So up here is a peak. And then finally, we've got a slight fall that happens afterwards. So a slight fall, okay? So again, pen and paper, please, guys. And you're going to be putting these actually into the full sentences for me. So you can see that it's been broken up. This is clearly not correct. It's all a bit of a mess. We've got full stops all over the shop. So I want you in your workbook, in your notebook, to please write these in the correct way. Or if you feel like there's enough room, I'm more than happy if you want to just write it here. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Please press pause on this video until everybody in the class has finished. So the answers here we have, from 1938, the number of births rose quickly. So 1938, the number of births rose quickly. Hang on, sorry. Oh, sorry, and you're going to have to match them. So we have to rewrite first, and then you need to match them because this doesn't look like quickly to me. Sorry. Okay, so first rewrite and then match. If number 1 should go with A, which it clearly doesn't, that's why I got a bit confused then. Okay, so the number of birds, from 1938, the number of birds rose quickly, and this would be associated with C. So you can see how it's gone up really quickly. Number 2. Oh, sorry. Number 2, between 1973 and 1991, there was a steady increase in the number of birds. So a steady increase would be A. So you can see how it's just steady, slowly rising up. Number 3, the number of birds peaked in 1986. Peaked in 1986. I would suggest that that would be with a D. And finally, 4, the period between 1961 and 66 experienced an abrupt decline in the number of birds. So an abrupt decline would be B. As you can see, it's just going down there really quickly. Okay. Now for some fun, I'm going to be reading out some details of a graph for you, and you need to complete that for me. Okay, so I'm going to be reading out a description of a graph, and you need to see if you can complete it correctly. So please get your pen out, and just on here, you're going to do in maybe a bar chart, indicating what goes where. Okay, here we go. This graph traces the annual incidence of malaria in Hainan, China between 1995 and 2008. The period between 1995 and 1997 was marked by a steady decrease in malaria incidence from 85,000 cases down to 65,000 cases. In 1998, malaria incidence rose abruptly to 75,000 before decreasing again to 35,000 cases in 1999. The period between 2000 and 2004 showed a sustained increase in the number of malaria cases, peaking at 120,000 in 2004. The following year witnessed a sharp drop to 1996 levels, or 55% occurrence. Since then, there has been a gradual decline to approximately 22,000 cases in 2008, the lowest ever incident level to date. So I'm going to give you a minute to complete that, and then I'm going to read it out again, and you can have a look at whether you think it's right or wrong, and then we're going to have a look at what it should look like. Okay, so here we go. Again, it says annual incidence or occurrence of malaria in Hainan province, China, 1995 to 2008. All right, here we go. This graph traces the annual incidence of malaria in Hainan, China between 1995 and 2008. The period between 1995 and 1997 was marked by a steady decrease in malaria incidence from 85,000 cases down to 65,000 cases. In 1998, malaria incidence rose abruptly to 75,000 before decreasing again to 35,000 cases in 1999. The period between 2000 and 2004 showed a sustained increase in the number of malaria cases, peaking at 120,000 in 2004. The following year witnessed a sharp drop to 1996 level, or 55% occurrence. Since then, there has been a gradual decline to approximately 22,000 cases in 2008, the lowest ever incidence level to date. Okay, I want you to have a look at your partner. So Apple, you can turn around to Summer. Queenie, you can turn around to Clary. Who have we got? Betty. There's no more. Betty's not with us any. And you know, turn around and find something. Don't turn around completely. Johnson, I'm not saying look at the wall. That's not funny. Stop doing whatever it is that you're doing. Whoever is in front of Cole, I apologize. Just kidding. So have a look. Do your charts. Do they look the same? So it should be up and down, up and down. Do they look the same? Okay, and let's have a look at what it should have looked like. Okay, so have a look up on the screen. Look up on the screen and you can see that hopefully your graph looks very similar to this. If not, we've got big problems and we'll have to start all over again. Okay. Right. So we're going to do another graph. You're going to have to write a title for this one as well. Now you'll notice that this is a different type of graph. Okay, so this is going to be a bar chart. So I can't remember what you call these ones. Some other type of graph. And then this one's going to be a bar chart. All right, so you can see down here we've got male and we've got female. So there's going to be probably 2 bars for each of these. Okay. And you need to work out what the title is. I'm going to describe the graph to you and then we're going to go from there. Okay, here we go. This graph shows the life expectancy at birth in 2012 for men and women according to the income group of the country. The overall trend is a decrease in life expectancy according to income groups, with females expected to live slightly longer than males. The high income group for both men and women has the highest life expectancy for both groups, with male life expectancy at 76 and female at 82. The males at the upper middle and the lower middle income groups have a life expectancy of 72 and 64 respectively. The females for both of these groups are likely to live 4 years longer than the males. The lower income countries group has the lowest life expectancy, with 60 for male and just 63 for females. Okay, so as I said, I need to have a title for this. I need to know what this graph is about, and there should be 2 lines for each of these areas. Okay, so female, male, female, male, female, male, female, male. I'll give you a minute to complete that, and then I will reread for you, and then we can have a look at what it should actually be looking like. Okay, here we go. This graph shows the life expectancy at birth in 2012 for men and women according to the income group of the country. The overall trend is a decrease in life expectancy according to income groups, with females expected to live slightly longer than males. The high income group for both men and women has the highest life expectancy for both groups. Male life expectancy is 76 and female is 82. The males at the upper middle and lower middle income groups have a life expectancy of 72 and 64 respectively. Respectively means that it is in chronological order, okay? So it says respectively, it means the first is for the first thing I said and the second is for the second thing I said. The females for both these groups are likely to live 4 years longer than males. 4 years longer than males. The lower income countries group has the lowest life expectancy with 60 for males and 63 for females. Okay, I want to go back and find your partner. Have a look. Do your graphs look similar? Have you got the same or different title? Whose title is better? And then we're going to have a look at what the answer should be. Again, please press pause if you need a little bit longer before we go through the answers. Okay, all right, so let's have a look at the answers that they've given. So this is the information that I've just read for you, and this is what the graph should look like. So they've called it life expectancy at birth for men and women in 2012 by country income group. So the high income countries we can see in blue here would be male, and they've got it at 70, I think it was 74, yep. And then female slightly higher, male, female slightly higher, male, female slightly higher, and they're very close here, okay? So if you've got something similar to this, you did a very good job. Again, this is a really good example of a description of a graph, and that's what your assessment is going to be, all right? So at the beginning, they've actually explained, so you can see here, what the graph is actually showing. So just really quickly said, this graph is doing this, this is what it's doing. Then they're actually expressing, they've shown that they have interpreted the information. So they're not just saying, this happened, this happened, this happened, they've actually interpreted it. So the overall trend is what they're saying is that the life expectancy according to income groups actually impacts it, okay? So you can see if you've got more money, do you have a tendency to live a little bit longer? And also across the board, there's a tendency for women to live longer than men. Yay! Okay. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to let you guys have a break because I know that we've got period 3 coming up shortly. So finish off anything that you had to do. I don't know if that's the end of the class because you would have stopped and started. Anyway, I'll stop talking and I will see you in the next period for period 3, and we will continue on with this work. Okay, so hold on to these books and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye.